Hi again. Okay, so kind of as a part two to my button band ribbon lining video, I'm going to do a video on actually placing buttons and creating a button shank. Buttons are a big pet peeve of mine. Ever since I've started knitting and some of my earlier projects when I would knit from other designs and things like that, when I would find this beautiful sweater, I would knit it, I'd be so happy with it, I would put buttons on it, and I would hate my project. And 90% of the time, it was because the buttons were sewn on incorrectly by myself. There was nothing wrong with the pattern at all. The pattern was beautiful, the gauge was right, the fit was right, everything was right. It was my user error that was getting it all wrong and ruining the project and making me feel like a stuffed sausage in my sweater. And again, it was just because I was sewing the buttons on incorrectly. And so I wanted to do a quick video to show you how to create a button shank, which will prevent pulling like this. We don't want to see this happening on our buttons. We don't want this weird lump coming out over here. And if you make a button shank, you are going to get rid of that problem. And so the way that we go about doing that is, first off, I take 2 straight pins, find my buttonhole, which is right here. Now I don't pull my fabric. I don't want to pull it and get it all wonky and weird. I just kind of let the fabric lay as naturally as possible. Find my buttonhole, and then I come into my fabric and I place 2 straight pins in the shape of an X to mark where I want to put my button. This was another thing I had a lot of trouble with before I learned this trick. I never knew where to put my buttons. They always ended up wrong and weird and so disappointing. Boo-hoo-hoo. Okay, so now we're going to leave the pins in and we're going to put our button on top of those pins and begin sewing in. The reason that we do that is because we're going to make a button shank. We don't want to sew the button too closely. Oh boy. Let's get it on there. We don't want to sew the button too closely into the fabric. We don't, it's kind of counterintuitive. You think, oh, I want to sew it in as tight as I can so that that baby doesn't pop off. But that's not exactly what you want to do. So we'll go ahead and get our button sewn on. And again, as you're pulling it on, or as you're pulling your thread through, you don't have to pull super tight. You just want to get that button on because we need to leave room for the shank underneath the button. And I will let you know that I am not a very good seamstress. I make no claim to be a good one. Buttons, I love buttons. I love the way they dress up a garment. I have a button obsession. I collect them like I collect yarn. But I'm not very good at sewing, so this has taken me a little practice. Alrighty. So once you get your button, we made a couple good passes through. Now you might not want to do more than I'm going to do here, but I don't want our video to be super long. Once you've made a couple good passes through and you feel that the button's pretty secure, what you're going to do is come up like this, remove the 2 straight pins, and you're going to see now, look at, we've got a pretty decent space underneath here, okay? It's got a lot of good wiggle room. I'm going to come down, but I'm not going to go into the fabric. I'm just going to come down and get my needle out this way. And now you're going to pinch the button in your hand and start wrapping. Wrap. And this is the button shank. This gives you a little bit of space that when you put your button through the hole, it's not going to pull now. Your button's not going to be tight to the fabric. And I'll show you here. To secure it, I just push my needle through the actual button shank itself. I don't know if this is necessarily the best way to do it. It's how I do it, kind of taking a little bit from like weaving in ends. I just push it through a few times and then I tie it off. And I'm just going to use a simple knot here. I'm just going to go through here and tie it. Oh dear, I didn't bring scissors. Just a second here. I'm going to gnaw on this. Little barbaric. Okay. And what you're going to see now when we put it through the buttonhole is that we won't have any pulling, which is just miraculous, and it's so fabulous and so wonderful. Look at that. No pulling, isn't it wonderful? So that is how you will sew on your buttons the correct way so that you won't have any pulling, and you'll have this nice straight fabric that looks like you bought it from the store. So I hope that helps.